As you know,
Just the press, yeah. I've got their anthology.
Welcome everyone to Geronimo's books. What a lovely turnout. I'm Phil Geronimo. My wife Laura and I are the owners. We've been slogging through this for 2.5 years, and by some miracle of God, we're still here. And so, but we want to be the first people to like have a poetry crawl, and we're committed to it. Maybe September we're looking at right after all the big festive fest fiesta season and everything. So that is a work in progress. I think that's it for me. I It's pretty informal here, and I understand that the first reader is going to be friend of the bookstore, John Roche.
Thank you, Phil and Lauren. And thanks everybody for being here. And Jules is going to record this, which is cool. It will be on her YouTube, Jules Nyquist YouTube channel. She also asked me to mention the Poetry Playhouse workshops in Placitas. There are handouts going around somewhere. Flyers by the books. Thank you.
Teaching a class.
Yeah, okay. So it's I better take my phone out so I know what time it is. So it's a particular pleasure to read with Nathan Brown, who I've never had a chance to read with, and I'm really excited to hear him. And also a great pleasure to read at Geronimo's books, especially since Lauren's aunt, MJ Ayupo, was a good friend of mine up in Western New York, and we collaborated on a lot of poetry events up there. So anyway, I'm so thrilled by what this store is contributing to the local scene. Okay, I'm going to start with a few recent poems about the current crises. And Jules is from Minneapolis, or St. Paul originally. This is called Lament for the Twin Cities. And there's a quote, 2,000 federal agents sent to Minneapolis area to carry out largest immigration operation ever, PBS, 6 January 2026. Beirut, Fallujah, Ramallah, Crimea. This is what occupation sounds like. We are in charge here. You must comply. Your papers, please. Do not interfere. Stand back. Over there. Hands on your head. Always the same male swagger. Always the same smirk, masked or not. Always arbitrary justice at the end of a gun. Oh, Minneapolis, oh, St. Paul, we sat down by your mighty river one June morn and listened to St. Anthony Falls. We strolled your parks and museums, took the Green Line to Union Station on its very first day, gazed from the observation deck of Fauché Tower, and at night from the 12th floor roof of a downtown building. Watched the lawn bowlers on the roof of Britt's Pub, got drenched from a sudden shower on Nicollet Mall. We fondly recall your intelligent, friendly, cultured people and your unhurried pace. But today, we remember Melissa and Mark Hortman. Today, we remember George Floyd and Philando Castile. Today, we remember Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. This is from my 2020 Further Adventures of Joe the Poet book. Joe the Poet's Guide to Surviving Fascism. 1, know who your true friends are. 2, live near the tracks and keep your suitcase packed. I had a great grandfather who was a union organizer. That was his advice. 3, keep your passport current. 4, helps to know some folks with a farm or cabin hideout. 5, as Woody said, don't expect a handout from the rich, but the poor will share what little they have. 6, keep a sense of humor, even if it's gallows humor. 7, keep your guitar tuned. 8, keep on writing, but be careful how you share. 9, personal survival is important, but not the most important. 10, remember you contain multitudes and me belongs to we, but that goes both ways. And if I were to write this now, I might add, 11, keep a whistle and a cell phone handy. And 12, if that doesn't work, learn to fly drones. And move on to a couple new ones, short new ones. Invisible. Sleep with your face invisible. Wake with your fists clenched. There are no locked doors here. There are no door alarms. No laws will protect you. The police are not your friend. No one but yourself, your comrades, your poems can protect you. Sleep with good breath, but sleep like a cat. And the monks. Buddhist monks on peace pilgrimage walk from Texas to DC, across the Southlands as ICE terrorizes American cities. Iran explodes in protest. Ukraine freezes under Russian bombardment. Unspeakable horrors are perpetrated in Sudan. The monks wander in and out of our social media feeds like the ultimate refresher pause, or a surreal motif in an Altman film. In between riots, explosions, fires, grieving orphans, bloody faces, and the occasional kitten or puppy photo. On they walk, oblivious to how we perceive them on our small screens, sans sustained attention. And Cafe Review, some of you know that, venerable journal. Last summer, I had a poem in there I'm going to read that I think ties in with this. Some of you know the term Resolana that was actually popularized in part by Toni Morris. And there was a book, Resolana, Emerging Chicano Dialogues on Community and Globalization, 2009. And this also connects to a poetry retreat we used to have in the Finger Lakes. So it's called La Rosolano. Resolute or reconciled to our folly, we seek year after year La Resolana, the place where the sun shines, the south-facing wall, where in northern New Mexico, villagers gather to talk out issues. Or at the gel center before west-facing hill, usually bathed by spring rains or walking streams full of frog spawn, hoping something will gel beside tadpoles and mosquitoes. Our poem so much flotsam and jetsam, but what else is there to speak? Send forth on the pollen-laden breeze. The only way we pay our rent, resolutus, on this planet, dissolve the impediments blocking Asakia's life water, keeping each man or woman hidden from the other, the secrets poisoning the polis must be voiced. Somehow antidote found. Uranium tailings and sacred objects reburied. The fracking stopped. No poem stopped at the border. So I'm going to, did I forget my other book?
You want Tubbables?
Yeah, I need a Tubbables. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So this is book 2024, Tubbables, and things seemed bad then. And so I decided to do a book that, that was not exactly an escape, but at least a relief from some of the things that were going on. And I had a preface, prologue, or a defense of trifling verse, because London Bridge is perpetually falling down, because no one can put Humpty Dumpty together again, because the cupboard was bare, because the old woman who lives in the shoe still doesn't know what to do, because three blind mice, because Mary is quite contrary, because along came a spider who sat down beside her, because the bow is breaking, because the sky may not be falling, but the polar ice is surely melting. So most of these were not exactly upbeat, but at least different. Um, but uh, but the other things kept creeping in, much to my chagrin. I saw that movie. It came on at midnight. I was too tired to sleep, so I watched it. I tried changing the channel, but there was only Bowling for Dollars, reruns of My Favorite Martian, and some guy demonstrating how to use a potato peeler. The movie started in some American small town, what we used to call the Heartland, though I never knew why. Then there were monsters. Yeah. And uh, here's a flashback to 1968. Self-isolating, 1968. In Grandma's upstairs living room, hiding out from late spring pollens, the only room with an air conditioner. Ice pack on arm swollen golf ball sized after allergy shot. Reading the death of a president. Listening to Eric Burden's Sky Pilot on the radio, the long version. A soldier so ill looks at the Sky Pilot, remembers the words, "Thou shalt not kill." Sky Pilot, how high can you fly? You never, never, never reach the sky. After a line by Blas de Otero, and the line is, "A tiny glimmer in the day, a specific day, Monday." This was from somebody's workshop, probably somebody here at the workshop. There were roses, that I recall, and bullets. I heard but didn't see, and never knew who lay in the road with a bunch of lace at his throat. I never heard the drum, never got the call, never marched off to Verdun or Vietnam. Just a Monday in Manhattan, or was it Dublin or Dallas or Brussels? Just another day with tiny glimmers, budding roses, and unspecific promises. Until we heard the guns, until we heard the guns. So I'm going to try to lighten it up a little bit. I do a lot with kind of like nursery rhyme type things in here. And, I'm a free verse poet, but occasionally a rhyme is kind of interesting. So this is an actual friend, a childhood friend's name was Penny Haypenny. And I changed the spelling slightly so I don't get sued. But last I heard she was a Republican councilwoman in some Connecticut town. So I did not send this to her. Okay. uh, Penny Haypenny was a childhood friend who lived on Haypenny Bridge on Penny Lane. Penny, we'd say, a penny for your thoughts. Penny would throw a penny over her shoulder and reply. Now, Penny had too much sense to trade a pound for a pence. Penny always wore a mac in the pouring rain, though it seldom rains on Penny Lane. Penny left a bike lock on Haypenny Bridge, wouldn't tell us who it was for. Penny Haypenny left Penny Lane one morn, and her mum wouldn't tell us where or what for. Hey Penny, where you been? Hey Penny, where you been? Where have you been? Yeah. And This is Ode to a Jelly Donut, another childhood poem. Oh, transcendental jelly donut. Summer Saturdays at the shore, my dad would drive over early to the Soundview boardwalk, still littered with bottles and condoms from Friday night. The merry-go-round shuttered and all other amusements except the donut shop that opened at 6, maybe, though I was still in bed when he got back, so I can't be sure of such details, can only attest to the perfection of fried joy, the just doughy enough interior, the sweetness of raspberry oozing from it, the powdered sugar, the best thing a boy who hadn't tasted sex could hope for. And do one more of these childhood poems if I can find it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And this is called Kissing Auntie Mink. When you were very young, in the tall ceilinged parlor of your grandparents' Victorian house, and you were told to go over to a high-backed chair and kiss Aunt So-and-so, who sat half embalmed in her mink stole, with the small creature's claws and head enveloping Auntie's shoulders in a perpetual toothy death's grin. And the first thing that greets you before you notice the map of liver spots and the varicose veins, before she says something like, "Come kiss your old auntie, I don't bite," is the stench of camphor mixed with chrysanthemum, barely masking the smell of decay. Anyway, yeah, those minks freaked us out. Yeah, I had a yeah. I had a my sister-in-law used to count the minks at at the Christmas Eve church service. Anyway, um, I just got a couple more. This is called Dear Poet on Another Planet. What's the atmosphere like? Do you get any snow? Or is it red dust everywhere in your nose, in your ears, in your eyes? Red dirt clogging your boot heels. Do you sing your body electric, sing silicone anthems, or do you write odes to webbed anatomies? Does it get lonely on your planet? Are there other poets? Can you see Earth rising in your night sky? Is there any beacon that moves your alien heart? And snug of a pub. When you get locked out of Twitter, when Spoutable fails to load, when you can't recall your LinkedIn password, when Facebook gets too boring, remember that snug in a Dublin pub, etched in your mind, always open, always serving good conversation and non-refrigerated Guinness, with reels and jigs slightly muffled by the oak partition. On a particular night, maybe Joyce himself in one chair, Flann O'Brien in another, and you doing your best to keep up with the ricocheting words. It's Blackout. Sitting in the dark, I can almost recall life before the grid. As a child on the front porch, way past bedtime, waiting for a desultory August breeze, no air conditioning inside, reflection of a black and white TV screen across the street, watching for the occasional auto, listening for the Doppler swoosh of its passing. Quiet joys of staying up way past bedtime, sitting in the dark, listening to grandparents tell stories of life before the grid. And I'll end with something here. Oh yeah. I'll end with this one called I Like It Like That. Peace in the valley, no smoke on the sun, petrichor breeze after long, deeply soaking rain, Peace in the bosque, calm on the mesa. Folks going to church or school or market without getting shot. I like it like that. Friends hugging friends without masks or fear. I like it that way. Children playing in the park without bombs dropping on their heads. I like it like that. Nobody caring what color you are or who you love or how you worship. I like it that way. No hate spewing from the radio or TV. Baseball loyalty is more contentious than politics. I like it like that. Everybody getting paid a fair wage, millionaires paying taxes, free college and universal health care, a united effort to combat climate change, families picnicking, couples hiking, a crowded poetry reading, a back porch concert. I like it that way. Peace in the valley, no fire in the mountain. I like it like that. Thank you all. Okay, thank you. Better.
That was some lovely, well-timed free verse. Yes, yeah, you have great rhythm. Um, let's see. I first met Nathan last year when we did the Route 66 poetry reading. It was it was it was in and out. There was like about 10 poets in here. Each got to do two poems, is what it was, and in and out, man. It was like it was definitely on the road, and they had trouble getting everybody here on time because they were actually trying to drive the Route 66 route, and then they realized, wow, this takes a hell of a lot longer than than just going up 25, and so it uh I've been keeping in contact with him ever since, and he finally does spend time here in Santa Fe now. So we're lucky enough to have Nathan Brown, ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Brown.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Phil, for having me in. John, good to read with you. It was nice. So, um, I'm going to dance around through a few books here because I I I want to go back to some older books and some older poems because I've published a lot of books and I miss them because you're always firing on the new book. You're always like, I'm trying to run around with the new book and read from it. So I've got some older poems from some older books that I want to go back and bring to the surface again. This is a book called Karma Crisis: New and Selected Poems, and I'm going to begin with one titled Grandma. Boy, she hollered, "Come on in out from under that car. It's time for lunch." And I cocked my head and counted on, in, out, from, under. Awed by her ability with language and still full from breakfast, I thought, now who else could do that? Just rattle out 5 prepositions in a row without even thinking about it. And somehow I knew what she meant. I watched oil creep down my hand and pondered my degree in linguistics. All those textbooks and phonetic symbols, and grandma, a total mystery. Like when I was 8 years old and she took me out to the garden through a banging screen door to show me our supper, all growed up out of God's ground. And then Tony Mares has been profaned a few times actually today already. So I have to read my Tony Mares poem. He was a very good friend and he was very good to me. And Tony Mares is one of the main reasons that I know everyone I know in New Mexico poetry scene. And I'm grateful to him for that. The title of this poem is, unfortunately, Shits in the Shed. Poets are shits, Tony Mares told me over golden margaritas at the shed. Told me that's what his third wife told him, quite possibly over margaritas when they first met. This one being the marriage that has worked out the best for him so far. And I thought, well, yeah, I mean, I can't fight her on it. But isn't that what pairing up eventually comes down to? You got to pick your shit. Choose one and go with it. And I must say that Tony and I were two fine shits in the shed that night. Tony, when he had margaritas in him, it became very fun. I enjoyed drinking with Tony. It was fun. So the next book I want to read from is an older book called Two Tables Over. And this is the one that won the Oklahoma Book Award. And I've just got a couple of poems I want to throw out from this one. The first one is called The Sign. Now she comes in, tanned, tight jeans, bleached blonde hair down the back, blue eyes and too much makeup, with a baby on her hip. And I had decided already what this poem was going to be about. When she sits down across from what looks to be her father and begins to sign with her one free hand. He smiles and signs back, their hands rolling effusively, lips moving in that soundless poetry. Their gazes trade loves back and forth. The baby's eyes glow in the wave and trickle of mom's fingers that must look like birds close enough to touch. And the trusses of my preconceptions begin to buckle, and the edges of prejudice begin to crumble like dry toast. And I have made a mistake, and I want to go over and apologize to her, but I don't know the sign for that. This is called Too Far. Hunched down over a rectangle table back in the poetry section, I heard over the tops of bookshelves the clerk tell a customer, if you get to religion, you've gone too far. And like a deer reacting to gunfire, I shot back without considering what an appropriate volume might be, a rather vociferous, I agree. A suburban soccer mom in the A's of the self-help section moved away nervously and as quickly as she could without making it painfully obvious. So I'm going to come back to the Karma Crisis book here, and I've got one that I want to read called Neruda's Garden. When the soldiers flooded Pablo Neruda's garden with their orders that night on Isla Negra, the poet turned them on their heels from the top of his stairs with one careful phrase. There is only one danger for you here. Poetry. And so it is, I'm reminded, that some poet in the Middle East lost his hand today, which makes me sad how safe I am in America these days. The worst they would do here, tap my phone, monitor emails, or maybe peek at my books, which worries me very little when it comes to a politician's skills with literary interpretation. Capitol Hill has forgotten this power. They don't know where to send the soldiers anymore. They've lost the coordinates for the garden. But I am at my desk upstairs writing, and the garden is here outside my window, filled with fellow citizens sipping lattes and driving Toyotas. And I am trying to become dangerous. Except that they are killing us now. So I've got the last one I'm going to read from this collection here is probably my most read poem over the years. I was trying to figure out, I had gotten a particularly bad critique on a book, and I was mad about it. And I decided, now, how am I going to give my final word on critics, what I feel about critics? And so I decided, by the way, do you know the difference between being critiqued and being critiqued? It's two very different things, right? I was critiqued, not critiqued. And so I decided that I would respond by becoming a critic, choosing a work of art, and critiquing it myself. This is called Between Two Artists. Dear God, I have always admired your work, and were it not for that, I wouldn't bother you with this, but I must say that your installation piece at Point Lobos Nature Reserve above Big Sur in California simply goes too far. The Monterey pines are too tall. The cypresses are too fanned out in perfection from trunks tied in intricate knots that would take centuries to unravel. The cliffs appear superimposed just for dramatic effect, with impossible jags giving way to fairy tale caves that burst forth gushes of blue water like a French soda topped with a spray of whipped cream. The crash of waves and explosions of foam are too much like a Disneyland ride. There are too many kinds of birds, too many varieties of plants, and too much color in both, I might add. In short, it lacks integrity. It does not speak to the truth of the way things are, and I don't think viewers will trust or believe its authenticity. Um, so I do want to just make quick mention. I'm a recovering preacher's kid, so I watch the clock. Um, I I do want to mention my newest series of books. These are memoir, and they are a summer, fall, winter, spring series that I did on a particularly rough year, a year of my life that basically just launched me out of everything I thought was home and put me on the road permanently for a year, and where I was homeless. The title of the series is called The Birth of a Vagabond, and that is quite true. Where I live is pretty complicated. It's nowhere in particular, and that is still the case. And I just wanted to read a quick piece. What I discovered about writing prose is that I can't not write poetry. Even when I put it in paragraph form, I just can't. I'm still writing poetry. That's the way it works. I think in poetry. My emails are in poetry. I write emails in poetry. Drives my friends crazy. So this is a really quick little clip from one of the pieces because basically this is on the road on steroids or blue highways. My version, because it's just the books, they go to both coasts and back and all around and all over. But this is just a quick little moment, a snapshot from book 2, which is called The Fallen Autumn. Parts of Northwest Texas will crush the bones of your soul if you don't know how to be alone. When you're 53 miles from the nearest town and all it offers when you get there is a Dollar General and a rundown Dairy Queen, you need to know who you are down deep inside somewhere when the sun sets, or when it rises, for that matter. If you've got a desire of some kind, there aren't many ways to fulfill it out here. So it's best to be a Buddhist if you can manage it. The folks who live a mile over won't likely understand your meditating ways, though. So they'll be praying for your lost soul, you can bet, down at the Baptist church on Sunday, which is nice, as it sort of doubles your chances at survival. And so those are books. It's funny, I wanted to go back and do some new stuff, some older stuff, but I will say that this new series really means a lot to me right now, and I'm very happy with it. And I'm fired up to kind of get it out into the world and everything. So a quick mention before I read the last piece here. There's a couple of books here that were written under a pseudonym. These are called The Mostly Unedited Poems of Ezra E. Lipschitz. And this is a series of books that I did back when Trump was elected the first time, where I changed my name and unleashed the flamethrowers. And because my daughter is a survivor. Not going to say any more about that, but she got very depressed when he was elected the first time, a man who's a self-proclaimed rapist. She was very upset about it. And so I wrote a series of books where I let her soul rip through a mutual friend that we had who was a hermit who lives out in the middle of Chromo-ish land up north, Chromo, between here and Pagosa. I can't say anymore or he'd shoot me. The only thing I'm worried about is that I am worried, it's now years later, I am quite worried that Ezra, who is not Ezra, that is not his name. Of course, I was not going to give his real name, but it is based on his personality and many things that he said. And my daughter is the only other person I know who ever met him. So he's this wild man that lives out in the woods. And I'm worried that Ezra has died. And I can't get out there. It's a complicated situation. And I want to check on him, and I don't know how to do that, and it's very complicated. But I just wanted to read one of my favorite moments around a campfire with Ezra. I twisted him around a little bit to make this poem sort of work. But this is Ezra spewing around a campfire. The title of this poem is called Beam Us Up. Dear Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise, never have we hoped you might come true more than we do now. Even though your forced melodramatic delivery was difficult at times, and even though some of the costumes and special effects and those crazy dudes with the massive throbbing eggheads were over the top, and yet I must admit that that very green alien dancing girl was hotter than we're all about to be. Oh, Captain, my Captain, where are you now in the hour of our ruin? Oh, Kirk, oh, Picard, Skywalker, Han Solo, we'll take anybody. And even though I may have mixed up my Star Treks and wars, we need a backup planet, and we need it now. And we mean it, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are our only hope. And that's a taste of what he was like. And these books are like that. And by the way, he is quite direct. These are not polite books. But the thing about these here is with the Ezra books, if you're needing to get your Bukowski on a little bit or something like that, any one of these books that remains on the table back there that are the Ezra Lipschitz books are free with the purchase of any other book if you want to grab one and get angry together. I'm going to end on this note. I was very fortunate to co-write a book with someone that I considered, I mentioned Bukowski. I kind of consider John D. Graham, Charles Bukowski reincarnated. He is an Austin musician, singer, songwriter. He's just awesome. He was in the Skunks. He was in some big bands throughout the years. And I co-wrote a book of poetry with John D. Graham. And this guy's been in and out of rehab 5-6 times, and we'll lose him the next time. I'm worried. He's hard to explain. But we did a book of poetry that we co-wrote the poems together. Don't Try is the only thing that Bukowski's gravestone says. It says Charles Hank Bukowski, and then the dates, the years, it was 20 through, he died in 94. And it says, don't try. And that's it. It's a small marker in the ground. It's not even upright. It's extraordinarily difficult to find out in Palos Verdes in California. And I found it. And I have to tell the story before I read this final thing here of when I first went to try to find Bukowski's grave, I owed him a drink. Because Bukowski was the person that when I was doing my master's and PhD work, he kept me from getting all into myself and getting all academic and crap. And he was my checkpoint that kept me from going down that rabbit hole of academic poetry, which I have a problem with and always have and continue to. And so I had a backpack, and in my backpack I had a liter bottle of tequila. Because I owed him a drink, and I had one of his books with me, and it was gonna, and I was there, man, whatever. But that bottle of tequila was so huge that it wouldn't fit in the backpack. So the top of the bottle was poking out of the top of the backpack. And I couldn't find that. I couldn't find this grave marker to save my life. And I finally gave up and I went up to the front kiosk, the guy at the kiosk at the front of the cemetery, Green Hills or something, out there in Palos Verdes. It's huge. And I'm walking up to the kiosk and the guy steps out and he looks over my shoulder and he goes, Bukowski. I had forgotten about the visual. Yes, sir. And I loved how his directions to Bukowski's grave began. Here was the first words out of his mouth. He goes, okay, well, you see that trash can over there? That's how the directions to Bukowski's grave started. Do you see that trash can over there? So John D. and I wrote poems where the title of the book is Bukowski's Grave. The title to every poem in the book is a line or a phrase from Bukowski, and we wrote in response to it. And then each of us has our own font so that you know who is speaking. Because in some of the poems, we trade stanzas and they go in and out. And then sometimes we each just wrote a response to that or whatever. But at the end of the book, when we should have been done, after a few blank pages for a joke, we had this phrase of Bukowski that we absolutely loved. And we wrote one last thing. And it was to Bukowski's words, a few rules for the starving artist that are really more just guidelines. So we each wrote a 7-point. Few rules for the starving artist that are really more just guidelines. And I want to read you John D's instead of mine because it's just too fantastic. 1, be certain you are an artist. Sure, you're starving. Maybe it's because you're lazy or untalented. It could be a lot of things, really. 2, please understand, words are under no obligation to you. Just because you expect them to accomplish this or that doesn't mean they will. Words don't give a single damn about you or what you want. Can you be okay with that? Think before answering. 3, being profoundly unhappy does not add depth or substance. It only worries your family and exasperates your friends. Angst is for amateurs. Sylvia Plath wrote in spite of her depression, not because of her depression. 4, are you even listening? These are unimportant. Quit staring out the window like that. It's creepy. 5, is writing well what you want with every atom of every molecule of every ounce of everything you are? Wow. Then I really hope it works out for you. 6, don't be clever. It's a college boy's crutch. And then 7, don't be deliberately obscure. Just because there is a weather vane that spins a yarn in the feathered east, listen, you are not Cormac McCarthy, and you will need to use a semicolon or a question now and then. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. What a way to kick off our very first poetry reading of 2026, and that we're really excited about. That was great. Yeah, that was great. Thank you guys. Like Nathan was saying, there's books for sale back here.